Hey there, creators. Today we're talking about how to shift the focus of your storytelling to really serve your audience and boost your engagement. If you've been using personal stories, anecdotes, or personal stories from your clients to connect with your viewers in order to make a point, let's make those stories work even harder for you, and I will teach you how in this video. So let's dive in. So first and foremost, I want you to remember that no one cares about you until they do. So in the meantime, you must make it all about them. You must make your content viewer focused, really providing value for your viewers rather than talking all about yourself. You can talk about yourself, you can infuse your personality into your videos, which I would encourage you to do, and your authenticity and all of those things. Of course, that's very important for growing a YouTube channel, but the majority of the content of what you're talking about should be for the viewers and how you can help them overcome something, educate them on something, but you really want to have the focus primarily be your viewers and the people you're trying to assist with your YouTube channel, entertain with your YouTube channel, or whatever the topic is that you're trying to get across through your YouTube channel, rather than making it all about you. And what I've noticed with a lot of new YouTubers that I've worked with is that they're stuck in the realm of just talking about themselves and thinking that people will be able to take the nuggets of information of how to help themselves based on those stories. But we really need to kind of spell it out for the viewers, how this story, how my experience can actually help you grow. So it really needs to be stated in a more specific and clear way. And I think that oftentimes that is lost in translation with a lot of new YouTubers' channels, or when they're trying to use their own experience to help people to grow, or to show them ways to grow, or to teach them something new. So the first thing you can do to change the perspective of being all on you and more on them is to reframe the purpose of your video. So instead of saying something like, this is about my experience of how I got over trauma, or how I got over depression, or how I survived a traumatic childhood, or whatever it might be. So instead of it being about, this is about my experience of how I did something and how I'm here now, make it more about, this is about how my experience can help you, how I achieved this, and how I want to help you to achieve it as well. So it comes back to your viewer all the time. So you want to reframe from me to you in order to make your videos more inviting for people to watch and actually relate to them. As a hook example, if you wanted to use this with a hook, you could say something like, ever feel stuck on how to handle criticism? Let me share a story of how I turned a negative review into a huge opportunity for me, and how you can too. So that way it's talking about how I'm handling criticism, but the way I handled it really transformed the outcome. And I want to teach you how to do that as well, so that if you ever have to deal with constructive criticism or handle criticism in the future, you can do it in a successful way as well. So this frames the video around what the viewer will learn, right? Not just what you've been through, but how you can help them. You're giving them an immediate takeaway, and that sets the tone for the rest of the video. The second thing you can do is just that, actually, is to add clear takeaways for the viewer from your videos. So for example, you can say something like, last year I lost a brand partnership over a misunderstanding. At first I was devastated, but then I realized I could use that situation to better my communication skills. Takeaway: if you're in a similar spot, here's how to respond to setbacks. 3 things to do today to turn failure into fuel for your growth. Your viewers need to know how they can directly apply your story to their own lives, or your advice will fall flat. So just telling your story is not enough. You have to break down why this story is important for them, what they can glean and gain from this story. The third tip I would give you with regarding this is to engage viewers with questions. So in other words, you want to encourage engagement by asking thought-provoking questions throughout the video that makes the audience think about their own situation. An example could be like, have you ever had a major setback in your career? Or how did you bounce back? Or what's one thing you wish you knew when you first started your journey on YouTube? What would have helped you grow faster? Engage with your audience. So these questions not only spark reflection on the viewer to look inward and to ask themselves these questions and hear it in their brain, but they also encourage the viewer to leave comments and join the conversation within your YouTube channel below your video. So it encourages 2 things. It's twofold. It's getting them to really think about how your experience, how your questions that you're asking is encouraging them to think about something, but it also encourages them to post comments. So the fourth way to do this is also within your titles. So you want to craft value-driven titles and thumbnails. These need to reflect the value that you're offering the viewer. So instead of saying our trip to Disney, it's all about you. You could say something like, The three things I learned when taking 5 kids to Disney that will be a lifesaver for you, or something like that. It's more about them. It's not about our trip to Disneyland. No one cares unless you're famous or unless they have been following you for a while, right? No one's going to really watch that. But if you provide it the title in such a way that it's like my 5 takeaways from Disney after going there for a weekend with 3 young children, things you need to know, or something like that, right? It's about them now. The title will clearly tell the viewers that they'll get practical steps, not just your personal story. They'll be able to learn from your experience and what not to do at Disneyland. And your thumbnail also should highlight that value visually too. So you could show in your thumbnail how like you're pulling your hair out, or like being, have like 5 kids hanging on you or something like that. So that it really captures the attention of people that have kids and small children, so that they can be like, oh, this looks like something I can relate to, right? So you want to also play with it in your thumbnail as well to also provide that value right away when they visually see your thumbnail. So tip number 5 is a story, advice, balance framework. So here's how I would break it down with advice and story. Story would make up about 30% of your video. So share an engaging personal experience for 30% of your video. And then 40% of your video would be insight. So reflect on what that story taught you and teaches your audience inevitably, right? So you can reflect on everything you learned in that story, how that the biggest teachings, the biggest takeaways, those types of things that you learned through that story, through that personal experience. And then the last 30% would go to practical advice that they can implement in their lives to change their lives. So it's 30% story, 30% practical advice, and 40% reflection, because a lot of the takeaways actually happen in the reflective part of the video. When you are reflecting on your experience and sharing that with people, they can kind of put themselves in your shoes and see it from your perspective. And so that's why the reflection part has more percentage than the story or the practical advice, because the practical advice is kind of just like a summary. These are the things you can take away from this in a nice, neat little package. But the reflective part of the video is really where people start to have those aha moments, where things start to click into place. And then at the end with the practical advice, or strewn throughout the video, they will start to really have that click in even more. So that's why it's broken down with 30, 40, 30. So for example, the story would be, when I first started my YouTube channel, I didn't get any views for the first 3 months. I was ready to quit. Then the insight would be that taught me that growth takes time and that early success is often invisible, and that I am going to be in this for the long haul if I want to see the growth. The practical advice part of this would be, if you're feeling stuck, here's what you can do. Start by engaging with 5 new people in your niche every single week. That will help you grow your channel faster. It's the story of like how I felt stuck, what I learned from that experience, and then how you can take what I learned and apply it to your own life. The next tip I have for you would be to use personal stories to build credibility, but don't make them the main focus of your video. The goal is to make sure that the advice is what sticks. The advice is what stands out. The information on how your viewer can grow into the person they want to become, or be entertained, or learn something new. But the focus of the video should be them and how they can grow. So you want to make sure that the advice is really clear and that it doesn't get lost in the storytelling. For example, when I faced burnout after posting 3 videos for 6 months, it really took a toll on me. And this is what I learned. Consistency is key, but not at the expense of your health or your family. Here's how you can find balance while growing your channel. So it brings it back to the viewer. And the last tip, number 7, is to leverage feedback loops. What do I mean by that? That means to ask your viewers directly, what's one thing you learned recently that you wish you had known sooner? Again, not only does this create engagement, but it gives you valuable insight into what your audience wants more of, what they're going through, what they relate to, what they're experiencing right now in life. So by using this feedback loop of getting feedback from your viewer, then you can then loop it back to them by creating videos that relate to what they are struggling with. So by asking questions, encouraging engagement, you also get to know your viewers more by sharing your own experience. They share their experience. By being vulnerable, then they become vulnerable on your page as well. And it creates this beautiful feedback loop of how you can then create more engaging content, because you're creating content that relates to them even more. So there you have it. Focusing on your viewer more than focusing on yourself will help your viewers to be able to see the light at the end of the tunnel, be able to be inspired by you, motivated by you, understand how to implement certain advice and tips in order to improve their lives. So remember the 30-40-30 rule, 30% story, 40% reflection, 30% advice. That will get you really far. And of course, it's not set in stone, but it is a helpful framework to have in mind when you are creating your videos with providing value to your viewer in mind. By the way, if you also want to know more about how to structure your videos in depth, like with the intro, the outro, the main story, all of that, definitely check out the video that pops up now. It will be all about how to structure your videos for YouTube videos. Okay, thanks you guys. See you in the next video.